SpaceX has been busy this week. Not only were they getting ready for the undocking of the Crew Dragon, which, of course, we all just saw in the last few minutes. Not only were they getting ready for the Starlink 6-61 mission, but they also rolled the next Super Heavy booster out to the orbital launch mount to do some testing ahead of the Flight 6 mission. Of course, SpaceX made quite a bit of history by catching the Super Heavy booster during Flight 5. We'll likely look to mission in which Starlinks were deployed, and you can see the payload fairing separation in the views from what SpaceX describes as both the active and the passive payload fairings. Video also cuts off before we see the parachutes deploy. That would be cool to see that sequence. Maybe they'll release video of that sometime in the future. There's a view from the other half of this payload fairing duo here. In a second, you'll see a side-by-side or one view on top of the other. Again, SpaceX will endeavor to recover the payload fairings being used on this particular mission once it's complete. SpaceX is working to certify both its Falcon boosters as well as the payload fairings for up to 40 flights apiece. While SpaceX doesn't often make mention of the number of reuses that the payload fairings have completed, so far, historically, the most flown boosters were B-1061 and 1062, which managed 23 missions apiece before they ended their service for SpaceX. Of the boosters that are currently still flying, the flight leader status belongs with B-1067, which has 22 missions to its name. Most recently launched back on September 17th. The first stage booster flying on today's mission, B-1073 in the SpaceX fleet, will be launching for an 18th time. And we'll talk a little bit more. Now, T-minus 12 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. This booster, tail number 1063, is getting ready to fly for an 18th time. So while we have time, let's go ahead and step through its flight record. First flew back on May 14th of 2022. That was the Starlink 4-15 mission, adding 53 version 1.5 Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. Next up was a C-band communications satellite for SES-22, that lifted off on June 29th. That was followed up by a pair of Starlink missions on August 10th. That was Starlink 4-26 and September 24th. That was Starlink 4-35. Those are followed by this booster's first lunar supporting mission, the launch of the Hakuto R mission lander, lifting off on December 11th. Followed up on February 7th of 2023, B-1073 launched the Amazonas Nexus satellite. This was a Spanish communication satellite for the company Hispasat, covers the Americas, Europe, and North Africa. Followed up by a mission to the International Space Station, the 27th commercial cargo flight to the ISS for SpaceX. CRS-27 lifting off on March 15th. It was followed by a series of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 6-2 on April 19th, 5-11 on June 12th, 6-12 on September 4th of 2023, 6-27 on November 8th, 6-37 on January 15th, coming into this year, and 6-41 on March 1st. It was followed up by the first mid-inclination orbit rideshare mission called Bandwagon 1, which launched on April 7th. Brought us back to Starlinks. We had Starlink 6-58 on May 13th, 8-9 on July 3rd, and most recently Starlink 10-7 on August 12th. Setting up for Starlink 6-61, getting ready to lift off today, assuming all continues to move well with this rocket. Speaking of the rocket, as we're currently T-minus 10 minutes, 16 seconds and counting, let's go ahead and talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle. Getting ready to launch in just a hair over 10 minutes. Stands 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage. Just talked about that booster, 1073, flying for an 18th time today. The base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs. They'll be used to land this booster on the drone ship, a shortfall gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. And at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely within the interstage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a nozzle that is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. If SpaceX doesn't need the full power of the upper stage, it can use a shorter nozzle, which is cheaper to manufacture. The upper stage produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. And on a Starlink mission, they will use the long nozzle. MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, that being RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. Following spacecraft separation or deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be a third burn as a deorbit burn, helping to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings, encapsulating the 23 Starlink satellites. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, a shortfall gravitas. They will gently splash down under parachutes, like we showed you a little bit earlier in the broadcast. And SpaceX will use one of its recovery vessels to scoop them up, bring them back into Port Canaveral, offload them, drive them on over to Cape Canaveral, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. We're now T-minus 7 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. We are coming up on the engine showdown sequence. That process, mission audio from SpaceX. Should be hearing the call for Strongback retract.
Strongback lower has started.
Right on cue. Nice view of the crew access tower on the Falcon 9 against the backdrop of the setting sun. Peering through that crew access tower. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. You'll notice our countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, a little bit ahead of what you see there from SpaceX as the clamp arms are opening up. That's because our clock is in real time. What's coming through from the SpaceX feed is coming in on a slight delay. So for the first part of the coverage post liftoff, we'll be making our calls out based off of real time as those align with our actual tracking cameras here on the ground. Now T minus 2 minutes, 47 seconds. The Falcon 9 first stage
Stage 1 launch
locks
float is complete.
load is, as I was just about to say, is just wrapping up. Next call we'll be hearing is for second stage LOX load. It's coming up in now less than 30 seconds. Now less than 2 minutes. Should hear the call for second stage LOX load being complete momentarily.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. What you're seeing here on your screen are the ground gas closeouts.
Gas launch closeouts has started.
Good call from SpaceX. Now just over a minute away to liftoff. We'll come back to comments from the live chat on the other side of liftoff, but with just about a minute to go, we're going to keep our focus here on the Falcon 9 rocket. T minus 1 minute.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call control, the ground, the countdown is handed over now to the ground sequencer, from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks being brought up to flight pressure. And with that go for launch, we are now just about 30 seconds away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-61 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Now a little more than a minute into flight. Some great tracking views from our team here around Florida's Space Coast.
Max Q.
A call from XQ, the Falcon 9 passing through the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming upon a few events in fairly rapid succession. See first stage main engine cutoff at T plus 2 minutes 25
Impact well
seconds.
started.
That'll be followed by stage separation a few seconds after that. The Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite at T plus 2 minutes 36 seconds. The payload fairings will be deployed at about the 3-minute mark. That call you just heard from SpaceX, they are thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage in preparation for its ignition coming up here in less than 30 seconds. Coming up on MECO. Do you see MECO? A great view of stage separation from
Main engine
Frank P.
cutoff.
Carson's. And there you see ignition.
Stage separation confirmed. And back
Good
ignition.
views from the SpaceX onboard cameras and some excellent tracking today. Now going through a little bit of cloud from that camera vantage point. Fortunately, we've got other members of our team spread out around Florida Space Coast. Good view of the payload fairing deployment.
Fairing separation confirmed.
See that from the onboard cameras there. The Starlink satellites on this mission now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this flight. Some good views from Chuck and Jen Briggs, seeing both the upper stage and the Falcon booster, as well as the payload fairings reflecting the sun. Really nice views here today. Now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. We're less than 2 minutes away from the next milestone, which is the first stage entry burn. That burn's set to last about 24 seconds in total. Still getting some good views of the Falcon 9 upper stage. A little hard to track with the wind today, but this view coming from P. Carson's with Max Q Productions. At the time of day as well, the onboard cameras from the Falcon 9 first and second stages are really quite something. Now coming up on 5 minutes into flight. Less than a minute is when the entry burn is set to begin. We may or may not be able to see it from the ground with our tracking cameras. If we do, we'll of course bring those views to you. T plus 6 minutes and counting. Entry burn should be underway in real time.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Entry burn may just be in the wrong position in the sky as compared to our tracking cameras to be able to catch it. That burn will have wrapped up by now. in real time. That is, you're seeing it from the SpaceX feed coming in on a slight delay.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Good call on the conclusion of the entry burn. That sets up the Falcon 9 first stage booster to start its landing burn coming up at about T plus 7 minutes, 44 seconds. And a first stage landing on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas, about 8 minutes and 13 seconds post liftoff. Less than 30 seconds away from the landing burn beginning. Those puffs that you've been seeing in between the hypersonic grid fins on the Falcon first stage booster are the cold gas thrusters. Those help to adjust the attitude or the position of
Stage
the
1
Falcon 9
transonic.
first stage booster
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
as it makes its way towards the drone ship. Flight termination system, or the FTS, has been saved, as you just heard, no longer needed at this stage in flight. And the Falcon 9 first stage traveling below the speed of sound.
Stage 1 landing burn.
That landing burn underway, we should get some views of the drone ship coming up momentarily.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And
Stage
for
1
an
landing confirmed.
18th time, booster 1073 is safely down on the drone ship.
And back shutdown.
And with that, we are now T plus 9 minutes, 14 seconds, and counting into this mission. Coming up next will be the reignition of the Merlin vacuum engine at T plus 54 minutes and 5 seconds. There'll be a brief 1 second burn to circularize the orbit. And the Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 13 seconds. With a good liftoff and landing of that first stage booster, we're going to go ahead and turn momentarily to our mission stats as they currently stand, but do want to thank a few folks in the live chat for your support this afternoon. Cruised on into the evening. Our thanks to Sulfur for Lunch for a 100 SEK super chat. Really appreciate that, Sulfur. It says Spaceflight Now rocks. It's very kind of you. Ryan Snyder with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ryan. Saying thank you, Spaceflight Now team. Appreciate your support of what we do here. Let's see, I have the $2 super chat. Saying from Bob the Bugman. Appreciate you for that. And also for joining us with channel membership at the Pad Leader level. Patty Chichil, one of our pre-existing channel members with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Patty. Good to see you tonight. It says, watching in my car. Thank you, Spaceflight Now. And the mods, always great job. And last but certainly not least, big thank you to another one of our wonderful channel members, Beverly Knuckles, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much, Beverly. And to our newest 10 channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And be sure to thank Beverly in the live chat if you haven't already. And thanks as well to Leonardo Dominguez for a $2 super chat. Thanks for your support tonight, Leonardo. Turning now to our mission stats as they currently stand. This particular launch marked the 18th flight of the Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1073 in the SpaceX fleet. This was the 384th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 99th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 329th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 104th launch of the year, including 2 Falcon Heavy missions and 3 Starship flights. This was the 121st SpaceX orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 211th from Pad 40 for SpaceX, and the 266th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Currently 101 total Falcon launches on the year. A little typo at the top of that should be October 23rd. Of course, there were a couple delays with this mission. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 82nd landing on the drone ship of Shortfall of Gravitas. That marked the 280th SpaceX drone ship landing and the 357th overall booster landing for SpaceX. Finally, with some industry stats, this marked the 72nd orbital launch from the Sunshine State. Pause to note here, this ties the total number of launches completed from Florida in all of 2023. So one more and we break the record. And of course, being that it's only late October, we will more than just beat it by the time year's out. Still plenty of time for a number of missions to go up from here on Florida's Space Coast. This mission marked the 108th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 118th from U.S. Rocket Company this year, and the 194th orbital launch from around the world. With 6 orbital launch failures so far this year, here's where the pie chart currently stands. U.S. holding 61% of that pie, China with 51 launches on the year now. They had one this morning. They hold 26% of the pie. Russia, with its 11 launches, has 6%. Go to with 1 orbital launch attempt and failure.